Thank you, Admirals, for being here today. What do you see as the greatest threat to readiness? I'd be curious of each of your opinions.
I'd like to start, Congressman. Thank you for that question. For the Navy, particularly because we're capital ships, we need stable budgets. We sometimes are required to purchase in a multi-year. But I will tell you, when we sequestered in 13, we not only had to cancel deployments. I was down at Fleet. We had to delay the deployment of the Truman to generate savings in our Omen account, and then we had to delay maintenance. And having our ships repaired is at the heart of readiness. So if we cannot get out of underneath this shadow of sequestration, and then if we end up sequestering, that will have a terrible impact on our operational ability. But we also need stable budgets, and so that we can plan and build ships for the Navy of the future.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And what I would add to what the Vice Chief said is that when she mentioned about sequestration and what happened with that, as you all well know, the money came from all the wrong places. And that had second and third order effects that have followed us for a number of years after that. The stability of the budgets is very critical and important as well. But another very challenging footnote to all this as well is the continuing resolutions. Because if we are unable to be able to quickly move ahead each year on a budget, then we're waiting until way too far into the year, and then we end up sub-optimizing where that money can ultimately go in a whole range of different accounts. And so we certainly appreciate what you are trying to do to help us in that regard, and thank you for the question.
And sir, I'll give you the operational snapshot of that is, again, your Navy, based on those numbers, we are not only trying to reset readiness, but we're doing it in stride. So no peace dividend where everybody came back and we're trying to get the ships fixed. We are still deployed at virtually the same rate we were during the height of the two wars with less numbers of ships. So the challenge is in understanding how the Navy is trying to reset readiness, while at the same time understanding we remain forward. We're providing leadership options in time of crisis. We're providing deterrence against increasing number of adversaries, I would say. We're assuring and reassuring our allies. So all of those things, if you understand how we're operating, that'll help you get to the, I think, the financial answers that the Vice Chief and Admiral Cullom gave.
And I appreciate those answers. That was my own experience in my decades in the service, that the budgets, commanders end up having to have knee-jerk reactions. You're 1/3 into the year before you have any kind of spending. Then you're rushing to waste dollars to try to catch up. It has a lot of volatility on the warriors. With regard to those convulsions, as we continue to take risk with our nation's defense, I believe beyond our ability, I'll say it, I think we're cutting too deep. I think we're putting our nation at risk. How do we retain the sailors that have the experience? We can't create them overnight. When we see emergencies happen, sailors and Marines, soldiers will have to stay alive long enough until the nation can catch up to them. And that typically, historically, from tricorn hats to today, has taken about 2 years. How are you mitigating this and trying to retain the best sailors' experience in these cuts, and have you been able to address it?
So, Congressman, we're in terms of where we are in our end strength, in a slightly different place than our counterparts. From the time 9/11 started over the first 10 years, our Navy actually came down in size. As I said, we were above 300, well over 300 ships. We were at 14 carriers, and now we're down to 272 ships. Our force size came down as well, several thousand people. We have stabilized at around 322,000 to 324,000 people over the last few years, and we're projecting we're probably going to stay at that. And then as we build up into a 308 ship Navy, with this budget, we should be at 308 ships by the end of the fight-up. Then we might have some changes in that force structure. So right now, part of this is, as Congressman Whitman pointed out, stable deployment cycles, steady state predictability to our sailors is very important, that they, and operational tempo that they can have the proficiency but doesn't exhaust them. And then in terms of actual retention, we started looking at this a couple years ago and came up with Sailor 2025. We are a technologically focused force, and for us, when the economy is good, our nuclear-powered engineers, our aviators, all of our engineers have other options where they don't have to deploy and get separated from the family, and quite frankly, they will get paid more money for the skills, these wonderful skills and education that they have. So we have looked at the quality that we provide of life and service that we provide our sailors, and have looked at education programs, internships outside of the Navy where they can get some experience and bring innovative ideas back into the Navy. For quality of life, we've expended child development center hours. You'll appreciate this. We finally have started to expand our fitness centers so that the sailors can go in at any time, and we're working our way across the fleet. And then we've gone to a 12-week maternity leave to allow our sailors to manage parenthood and that work-life balance. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Russell.